Hello and welcome to the JCN Clinic podcast show. I'm Jessica.
And I'm Carissa.
And today you've just got Carissa and I again. If you're a regular listener, you've probably heard our recent episode with Rachel Finch, which was awesome. But today it is just the two of us back in the seats, the driving seats, let's just say. So we are going to chat. Well, look, it's probably going to be more me you're going to hear from today. And Chris is going to probably helpfully throw questions at me and guide me so I don't go off on ridiculous tangents. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about how to support endurance training. Really, we're going to be focusing on running with respect to whether it's a race or a long run or general training. But also I'm going to be talking about nutrition as far as leading up to a big event and then also post an event. So this is off the back of a lot of questions that have come at me, not only on how to fuel these events appropriately, but people have had a lot of questions about how I'm eating leading into the event and then how I'm recovering. And then also I want to cover the gut component. There's quite a lot of interest in how the gut deals with all of this and what you can do potentially pre, during, and post. So yeah, there's a fair bit. And if I had pre-thought it, I probably should have come up with a really catchy title instead of just explaining all of that, but I just haven't. So I'm sure I'll have one by the time we put this up.
You'll have one by the time it goes up. It'll be fine.
It's like, okay, where to start?
Where to start? Yeah. I think it'll be a good one because I think I know a lot of my clients do maybe not so much endurance. Like endurance is, I've got a couple of clients that do that. I've got a couple of clients that do Ironmans and half Ironmans. I've got a lot of clients that do tries, which I think is, that's a lot. It may not be a 50K run, but it's like, it's
still huge.
It's huge, man, far out. So I think there's a lot of hopefully a lot of our listeners, but if not, if you're someone who has a partner who is into this might be a really, really beneficial podcast for them, because I even know with my clients, I get asked a lot of questions. I've even booked a few in with Jess already just to have that, I call it the training chats, beyond what I can help people with. Like if you're doing my level of training or, the average level of training, then sure. But what Jess does and is doing at the moment is next level. So let's pick her brains.
Yeah, and I should preference this with saying, like, we talked once before, probably I think it was late November last year. So there is a podcast where I did talk about this a little bit, but was more specific as a rundown to Kosciuszko and that event. So this is where I want to be able to go in a little deeper. I must admit, kind of testing the waters to see how much interest there was. And I do get, like Carissa just said, this is like a little bit nichey, but it surprises me how many people are really interested. And probably, I think because it's also becoming, like, running in general, I think is having a bit of a moment. So whether it's more people are just running and then that is creating interest in, like, oh, what should I be doing? Do I need to do this? Like, do I need to be like taking things, or like where does that kind of line come about as far as when you need to think about that additional fuel load? So where to start? So I guess I'm kind of thinking about one particular listener who was asking about, like, the kind of classic pre-race fueling and then like the day of a race and so forth. So I thought maybe we could start there as far as what that looks like specifically, because again, I feel like we've chatted a little bit about more day-to-day nutrition, but you can hit me up, Rissi, if you think not, with any questions. So I think when it comes to before an event like this, and we are talking again like something that you're going to be out there for, say, more than 2 hours. So I think a half marathon, like, you could probably go into a half marathon potentially well-fueled prior, and then just rely on, well, actually it depends on how long it would take you, to be honest. But if you're pretty well trained and you're going to go in and do a half marathon in maybe 1.5 to 2 hours, then you might be able to get away with just like some pre-nutrition and then post without having to think about during the race. But once you get over, I like to say over sort of 2 hours, you really need to be thinking about what you're going to be consuming during an event or during a race. So you also then need to think, before we get into that, about the pre-lead up. And this is where, like, again, as a nutritionist, my brain just goes wild with like how much you can get into the nitty gritty as far as like what you need and maximizing your nutrition so that you feel your best. Because leading into one of these types of an event, and I guess I'll say endurance, but I'll probably start referring to it as running. And then, as Carissa said, we can think of it as like something like a try. That's maybe one of the other really popular events. You want to make sure that you are really well fueled and fed, but you also want to make sure that you have really well-stocked glycogen stores. So that means that all of your storage of carbohydrates is at maximum capacity, because that is going to be your most readily available, easy to use fuel source. There might be some people out there that are like, what about fat? And like, can I be fat adapted? There's some individuals that might go okay like that. I know.
Like, please don't even ask me that question.
There's some individuals that might go well with that, but it's far and few between, and they're generally going to be males. The majority of people are going to do way better with carbohydrates. And even some of the like athletes out there who do follow maybe a little bit more of like a low carb, high fat intake, generally in like an endurance long event, they will end up using carbohydrates. Anyway, I digress. So
you want to be another day.
Yes. So you want to be going into these events with those glycogen stores as full as possible. So people may have heard of the concept of carb loading, and this has changed over the years as far as what that means. I guess the thing is, you don't have to get super scientific about this. Like, I like to look at it as the couple of days beforehand, you can just start looking at your meals and start having a higher amount of your carbs and reducing some of the other portions on your plate to make room for those extra carbs. So you're not like essentially busting at the seams, like overly full. And we're only talking, say, 2 days prior. So nutritionally, if your macros aren't perfect, like, I'm not worried about this. This is about maximizing your performance on the day. So an example might be, say, I'll talk about myself. Like, if I usually have my protein porridge, which is on the website, for breakfast, I'll knock back the amount of protein in it and then up the amount of the rice flakes that are in that. I'll get more liberal with my honeys and my maples. And I always add fruit to it anyway, but essentially it is just a way that I can skew the carbs up higher. For lunches and dinners, I'm looking at what my carb source is, whether it's some rice or some potato or sweet potato, and I'm having a higher amount of that on my plate. And then I'm having less of the vegetables and the fats, and to a point the proteins, but I try and still keep my protein there as far as like keeping, I feel like leading into these events, your protein's also important to try and keep stocked up, particularly as a female. So that's like a simple way, I feel like, of looking at it, and doing that is going to definitely increase your glycogen stores just naturally. But then in between meals, you can also look at having additional carbohydrates, whether that's snacking on fruit, whether it's having like carbohydrate high drinks. That's where it can also come down to what your gut can handle. But that's another sort of great way of increasing carbs. So I feel like that's a nice sort of general outline. However, there are amounts that you can lean on as far as, let's say, grams per kilogram, and that can range anywhere from 7 to 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilo of body weight. And when you start doing these actual equations, it's pretty amazing. So again, me as the nutritionist and wearing that hat, like after only 1 or 2 times, I was like, right, I'm going to start sciencing this hardcore. And it actually did blow my mind how high the carbohydrates were that I needed ideally to be getting in, and like what I had been getting. So I was still increasing my carbohydrates, but trying to hit what I wanted to hit was actually quite hard. And definitely by the end of the second day, you do definitely go to bed feeling like a Michelin man. Because
Wow.
carbohydrates will pull water with them. So you will hold on to a lot more water. You will feel a bit more bloated, and you do just feel heavy. But it's so minor, really. Like it's just a small window of time, and it's just all of that stored energy and all that stored fluid. But it is a little like, it is something that does give you bang for your buck the next day. And it's not like anyone else can see it. It's just like how you feel in your own skin. But it definitely did blow my mind, like how hard it was to actually try and hit those amounts. So I was trying to hit between 400 to 500 grams of carbohydrates in the day, and really trying to get higher to 500. But to be like blunt, I could not hit 500. I was more like mid 400s, and that's with like including the drinks and the additional things that I had prior. One of the races I did prior to the recent ones, I topped it off before going to bed with, we're talking to oh my God, Jessica, Ben? Was it Ben from the gluten-free? Yeah. I was talking about those donuts.
Oh, yeah.
I had those those donuts. I remember having that right after, like at the end of the night after dinner, because it was just like that extra great hit of carbohydrates. And then after that, I was like, oh my God. But I guess I explain all of that because there's different levels of how far you can take this and play around with carbohydrates, and also find what works best for you, because you can just naturally increase your carbohydrates, and that can work really well. But you can also play with some of these parameters and push it a little higher, and you may notice, wow, that actually really helped me even more so the next day. And I feel like the defining factors here are actually digestion and how your gut can handle this.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Ask that, like how long? Because for people listening who aren't in the more dialed up exercise space, most people who just train at the average level, so let's say maybe a couple of gym sessions a week and walking, like if they're not tracking, but I got them to track, I'm going to say the majority of my clients would consume between, hopefully no less than 100 grams of carbs, but more commonly not more than 200. So when you're talking about, double that and maybe a little bit more, straight away my digestive system, because I'm quite a carb heavy eater, I think. Like I definitely don't function well without carbs. I know when I do track, I sit around the 160 to 180, sometimes more, sometimes up at 220, but rarely over that 200 gram mark. So I think straight away when you say to me 400 plus grams, I think of just feeling. My first question to you would be, how do you, like, obviously you feel tired and sluggish a bit, but like finding your sweet spot, like how it plays over the next day, like how long did it take you to sort of work out that for yourself? Like, did you fuck it up the first time and totally overload or underload? You know what I mean? Like, and then just feel sluggish in your race? Because I think my first thought would be if I ate too much and overdid it, that I actually wouldn't perform as well the next day. You know what I mean? Because I'd be tired and sluggish, but you're saying like it actually just kicks in and helps. So
it's such a good question. No, I have learned, but it's been more that I have continued to increase.
Yeah.
So the first race I ever did, I was so underfueled. Like I look back on that and I thought I had an idea, but I had no idea. Like I went into it. I remember I had some eggs on toast for breakfast. Just, like a standard breakfast, but I didn't even know I was going to do this race. Like, to be fair to myself, like the day before I was doing heavy deadlifts in the gym. It was like a spur of the moment decision. So I hadn't done anything like food wise prior. And I literally just woke up, had eggs on toast, and went out and did this race, let alone how deficient I was during the race, which I can sort of speak to next. But race to race, I've actually played more with increasing it. And I think this is part of getting more and more used to like what you can handle and what feels right for you. But where you feel sluggish is actually more on the days of the carb loading. And again, it's only like 1 to 2 days. Like 2 days is great, but particularly that day before, it's more by like mid-afternoon, end of day where you feel it. But on the day of the race, because you've also been tapering as well, like you're not doing as much or exerting as much with your training, when you wake up on the morning of the race, that's a lot. You're not feeling that anymore. Some people, maybe this is where it's interesting, maybe with how people are about their own body, and maybe how if you've got any body image concerns, like you may be hyper aware of how you're feeling in your own skin. But honestly, like the morning of the race, when you're waking up and the adrenaline's pumping through your body, and you're also trying to get in that last meal prior, like the last thing you're feeling is like sluggish and heavy and so forth. You are like pinging off your brain from adrenaline. And your body overnight, like you have absorbed a lot of that and stored it away. And like you do then while you're sleeping, like you are using some of those storage, like some of that glycogen for sure, as far as like those processes that happen while we're asleep. So yeah, it's kind of fascinating that like I don't think it has repercussions onto the next day. I think where it can have repercussions though definitely is digestion, more so depending on how healthy your gut is with like trying to increase carbs. But we're talking carbs to receive right as far as like you're not trying to do this by eating heaps more veggies or like heaps of this. When we usually talk on the podcast, we're talking about all those complex carbs. Like this is really going to be more accessible and easy through more refined carbohydrates. So most of these are things like white rice, definitely potato and sweet potato. But this is a time where you do use things like honey and maples. I love coconut water. Like that's a great one for me. I'll definitely drink a fair bit of coconut water over this day. Like
I tried that sparkling coconut water.
You like it?
Love it. I got some on the
it's
weekend.
Good, right?
The one that you always
have.
Bonsai? You always have the video up, and I saw it the other day. I'm like, I'm going to get some of this, and it was really yum.
So good.
Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So that all like those simple carbohydrates are easier to get down. So it's actually pretty surprising how quickly you can add them up. But if you just try to do it with like a more whole food approach, like don't get me wrong, I think I still do it as a way more healthier approach to the standard people that I see doing it. Like there's some pretty crazy stuff that people are doing, like as far as like junk food and lollies and so forth. Like I'm doing this without any of that. So I still am really happy with how I go about it, but you have to do it from a more refined carbohydrate point of view. Like there's a reason why that white rice digests easier and quicker than the brown rice, because of that fiber. You don't want fiber filling up your gut too much on these days. And again, we're talking just for a 48-hour window, and also by like having a little less fiber leading into the race. For some people that can be handy, so that like you're not having a huge amount of microbiome fuel load in your gut, which if your gut is a little bit dodgy the next day through nerves and so forth, like it's hopefully not had as much fuel in the days prior, like the day or two prior. So you don't want to go like, it'd be a really bad idea. I mean, some people could probably have an iron gut and do it, but you wouldn't ideally for dinner want to have like a chickpea curry on brown rice unless you're in
dal.
You're right. It's just but yeah, as you're saying, like it is a gradual process. So I encourage people, like if they're starting to get into this, as far as like, that interest in doing their first race, just start with increasing your carb portions with your main meals. Think about the more refined carbohydrates over those 2 days. And then think about like the in-betweens, how you can stock it up a little bit more with some of these more like natural sources, if possible, I've talked about. The thing about coconut water too is amazing because it's like also nature's electrolyte. So another thing leading up to these races is if you're able to have more of your electrolyte intake. So a lot of people will use just Gatorade and start drinking electrolytes a day before, which you can do. But I love to go into it from a more like, if possible, whole food approach. Like that's why I love the coconut waters. I'm definitely having extra magnesium. I'm adding lots of sodium to my meals, more than normal, which is pretty intense anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm kind of feel like I'm ticking those buckets, and then like I'm having plenty of banana. So there's my potassium. So yeah, you're kind of also covering those bases. So yeah, start with a consciousness of increasing carbs. Build it slowly up, see how that feels for you. Don't expect to feel amazing end of day. You're going to feel a bit sluggish. But as long as you don't wake up the next day and your like gut feels horrible and upset, nerves and things aside, then, that's obviously working for you. And experiment with pushing a little bit more. And those equations I gave, like they're interesting to start low. So start maybe at 7 grams per kilogram and do that and see what it comes to for you. And if you want to like get in and track a little bit and see, like it can be a helpful tool, but just be conscious of you and how you feel are like the best indicator. So I think that's the main things pre-race as far as like carbohydrates, electrolytes. I think the only other thing would be the actual day of the race itself before it starts is that first meal. So depending on nerves, some people like really struggle. I never, ever, ever feel hungry. You're often getting up quite early, but I'm just getting it in. It always is like eating sand. Like I'm always really nervous. It never goes away. So it feels like, it's like it could be anything, but it just tastes like sand. And your mouth, so I'd say that because you're so dry, because you're just so nervous. So I'll usually, again, there's a bit of an equation there of anywhere from like, it's quite diverse, like 1 to 4 grams per kilogram of body weight. So like still like it can be anywhere to still trying to get like a minimum of 100 grams to like, 200, 300 for like really big individuals of carbohydrates still in the morning. And also you want to try, if you can, which is really easy actually, to get a mixture of glucose, but also fructose, because overnight we tend to burn through our fructose stores more. So as far as how that's used, so in the morning doing a little top up of both is really beneficial. And that's simple as far as like the classic like banana and honey combination, or having a bit of jam. So again, carbohydrates are king. Like if you want to put a little bit of protein in there, you can. But if you've had that protein leading up the meals before, like personally, this is like the one time where I'm like, you really don't need to worry about protein with your breakfast. I do have my pimped up matcha, let's be real, so there's always protein in that. Trying to get that down at like 3:30 in the morning. So,
Oh God.
But this could be, so again, I would do like a porridge. If I'm really good, I managed to get that down before buffalo. Actually, I ate 3/4 of it and then left the other quarter in the car. But I was pretty pleased with that. And that was just the rice flakes all cooked up, tiny bit of protein powder, hardly any, and then lots of banana and maple syrup. And then other times I've done like the gluten-free muffins with a bit of peanut butter, banana and honey, and they work really well too. So I'm getting combination of carbohydrates, the added honey and everything like really shoots the carbs up. Carissa's put her hand up.
Can you give us a time frame? Because to me, again, layman who hasn't done these big events, so I'm just asking for the people who are training and doing the bigger events, but the thought of eating that amount of food repulses them because they're just not used to it. But I'm also asking because I know with my clients, even when I've talked to them about increasing their carbs 24 to 48 hours before trail runs and stuff, and we're only talking like, not the endurance style ones, but people are just still so, especially women, they're still so worried about the carbohydrates, and especially that big carbohydrate meal the night before, that they're going to feel sluggish the next day. So when you're doing that for breakfast, what's the time frame between doing that and then starting a race? Like, is it to let it all settle? Because I think of having a bowl of oats with banana and all of that, and I'm like, mate, I don't think I'd be able to run for 3 hours before, like, to digest that. I might be wrong, because like you said, the adrenaline's pumping and all of that. So
yeah,
I'm interested, because I think, again, totally naive, when I did trail running, my nutrition was so bad. Even though I'm a nutritionist, I still ate well and whole food, but I would just have most I ever did, I think I said to you 18 or 20K. So like that half marathon thing. But like, again, I would have a banana before I would go, and maybe some toast and peanut butter, same as what I would do before I do a gym session now.
You're right.
So to me, that's why. So what's the time frame?
That's a good, that's a really good question. So really, most of the time, this is about 2 to 3, closer to 3 hours prior.
Cool. That makes sense to me.
With these events, you're usually there half an hour to 3/4 an hour beforehand. And then you also have to usually travel there. Like, even if you're staying close, you might be being shuttled in a bus, or you've got to drive to get to the start line. And most of the time you are getting up also earlier if you want to do this properly, again, like, this is about giving all the tips, you want to get up early to get this meal in. Now, I could have slept in, like, again, thinking of this more recent race. So the start was 7:30. We didn't need to leave we left at 6 from accommodation. All I had to do was get up and throw on my gear. Really, everything was ready the night before. I could have got up at 5:30 and just had a banana and just gone. I was up at 4:30 before, so an hour and a half beforehand. And the reason was so I could eat. Did I want to eat? No, I was like, it's 4:30. I don't want to eat. But again, I'm doing it because it's fuel. Like, this is looking purely at that nutrition as fuel. So if you can get something like this in about 2.5 to 3 hours prior, it just helps so much to have that proper carbohydrate meal. You may not be able to get it all in. Like, I definitely always struggle, but it makes a massive difference, because otherwise what can often happen, nerves or not, like, you can be at that start line and you're starting to get hungry, which is really not in a place you want to be. So yeah, if you can give yourself the time and get up earlier, like, that would be one of my biggest tips. If you can't get something down, if you're just so nervous and you just can't, this is where you want to rely more, if you can, then on the liquid variations. So whether it's like, fruit juice or electrolyte carbohydrate mixes, like, some people have to do that. Some people will literally just have a banana and then have some of those. Like, I totally get that, but this is about the optimal way to do it. And I actually think a lot of people could do it. That's just, as you say, maybe fear about how to do it, fear it's going to disrupt their race. But if you've had that time for it to sit, it really does work so well. And then honestly, usually on the way to the race, like, that's where I will half an hour beforehand. I always like the idea of getting something down like a banana, but I never do.
Yep.
I usually, though, will always now have, this is something I've built in, I'll have at least 250 mils of water with added electrolyte carbohydrate mix. So I'm topping that up before I even start. So there's usually another sort of 25 grams of carbs there with all the electrolytes. And then right before I start, I try, I laugh because I can never get it all down. I try to take a gel, but it's like, oh man, if there's anything that makes me want to vomit, I have these great Pure Sports Nutrition little ones that are like Manuka honey, and it's literally just like honey. Like, any other time I'd be fine.
Just so
but
nervous,
you should see me trying to, oh my God. And Damien will like give it, he's like, come on, have a bit more. And I like have a little bit. I'm like, but even with all of that, like, every little bit of extra carbohydrate you're getting in is just so helpful, so that when you're hitting and you're taking off, all of the food you've had 3 hours ago is out of your small intestinal tract, like it's moved into the lower bowel.
Yeah.
And the other carbs that are now there are more of like those liquids and quickly absorbable carbohydrates. So I cannot, I definitely, and I'll sort of maybe speak to like how that can play out as far as good examples and bad examples. But that to me is like the ideal way to go in, so that once you are out there and you start, and then 2, 3, 4, 5 hours later, you have stored, you've built up your storage so well that you have got all of this fuel in the tank to pull from.
Yeah, so good.
It's so
good.
So cool.
But it's like you said, like some people might just be fearful of it, but they just haven't played around with it yet. So I think because you've got the background of wanting to do it from a proper perspective, as opposed to just go run a marathon and flog your body, or run an endurance trail run and flog your body. Like you want to do your best, but also feel your best, but also recover well. So there's so many elements to why this stuff is so important to you. But I also think when other people get into it, and they'll feel the difference too. Like I know when, even just with my limited knowledge with my clients that do it, when I've helped them around their training stuff and we've just talked about it, like that has helped them. Just like I just wouldn't have thought to eat, I'm too nervous, or so.
And that's something you'll see, and we see it, I'm sure you've seen it with clients, like you just said, that as you start adding more, a little bit, you start seeing the difference. Like you will see the difference in not only how you perform, but then the recovery. Like this is even all of this alone before even thinking about what you have during the race or a long session or after. Like this alone is like so important, so that like you don't feel like you're just completely wrecked afterwards. So it's so vital. And it's amazing, like you do all of this loading, but it's actually amazing how quickly you burn through it all, which is hence why you need that intra-nutrition. Like you will burn through it all relatively quickly. Like you will generally finish these ultra or long events like behind the 8 ball, no matter what you do. It is like, it is so impossible to keep putting in that. Like you usually, say on average, you're burning like 800 to maybe 1,000 calories sometimes per hour. Like that is, you just can't get that back in. But you can do the best that you can, and that's where it just pays off. So I guess moving into that, as far as during the actual event,
I'm so interested to hear this.
So I want to give an example of, like, I want to definitely give some guidelines, but an example of why you need to do this. So the race that I mentioned was the first race. I didn't really do anything prior. During that race, it was probably about a 3.5 hour to close to 4 hours. Yeah, something like that. I took with me water, and then I took this electrolyte mix, but I didn't realize it didn't have carbs in it. It was just electrolyte. So you know how there's a lot of that stuff, Rissy, that's like, great. We might give it to clients for their electrolyte content because we don't want them drinking like loads of sugary carbs with it. So there's a lot of those products around. So I had that already in the cupboard. It was great. Like loved it, just generally. There was no glucose or anything in it. Didn't even really think about it. That race, like I finished that race, don't get me wrong, but it was like my batteries just died at a certain point. I could feel it. And I had on me some rice crackers, which I remember trying to like eat a few, and I could almost feel it within like a couple, like 10 to 30 seconds, just even that hit my system and feeling a little bit better. But that was sort of all that I had. And I look back on that and I'm like, I don't know how I made it to the finish line. Like it was so hard. But the thing that shocks me now looking back on that was adrenaline got me through it. But the recovery and how I felt afterwards, like how I felt at that finish line, but the rest of the day, I felt like I was in this tunnel. Like people were talking to me and I just felt like I wasn't even there. Like I felt so unwell and so disassociated from my own body. Like I had just taken everything and emptied everything out of me, and I had not replenished anything during the race, and even post race. Like that would, to me, was like an example of so not what to do. And like you can look and go, oh yeah, but you finished, but also like you could have gotten so much more out of that. And also if you continue to do that over and over, that's where you get into trouble and you start getting into like serious deficiencies. Like I was so wrecked. I can't even imagine the state. Like I'd love to have given bloods on that day to see what my blood work looked like. It was
ELFT would have been shot.
right. So that is not what to do. So what I have done and learned is like how to get better and better at this. And this is the part that takes time. You can't just go in and just do heavy, high amounts of carbs straight up unless, again, your gut is amazing. But most people need to work up to it. So usually as a female, if you can get around 60 grams of carbs an hour as a starting point is amazing. You might even want to start at 40, which is really, really low, but at least it's something. And to be honest, that's probably where I started and built that up. But 60 is always my minimum goal. And then if possible, slowly trying to work towards maybe 90, which is pretty high for a female. Some people, there's a real high carb revolution at the moment in this arena, and there's a lot of males and some females pushing over 100, 120. And it's amazing, like what's happening, like what sort of performances people are putting out by getting these types of carbohydrate numbers in. And it's because they're fueling, right? They've got all of that fuel to pull on, and they're doing it in training. So they're continuing to recover well and be able to continue to push their bodies. So that being said, even if we said around 60 grams an hour, most of the time you can do that with a mix of either a carb electrolyte mix, which can vary from something around maybe 40 grams to 50 grams in a mix. And then usually you would try and top that up with 1 or 2 gels an hour on top. My most recent race, I pushed my carb electrolyte mix further to get more out of that. And then I dropped back to 1 gel an hour, whereas previously I was doing 2 gels. But I get gel fatigue. I really struggle. Like I find the longer the race goes on, I really struggle to get them down and they start to make me want to spew. Yeah.
How many grams of carbs are in a gel?
So the ones I use are 25 grams, but they're very varied. So standards used to be 25. A high carb gel would have been 30 grams in the past, but with this whole carb revolution, some grams now are like 40 to 60 grams, which is amazing. I haven't tried one of them yet. I'm kind of itching to try it. So you could theoretically just use gels if you're good on gels. And this is where it's all about what you can handle. The gels can go from like a liquid consistency to a really like kind of claggy consistency, which I can't do. Like the Morton gels, I'm like, ugh. I like the liquidy ones to get down more, but they're still like a shot of like kind of liquid and like an intensity of flavor that can be, I find, quite hard to get down. So I do better. I don't know. I personally like the mixes better, and then there's different flavors. You have to play around with this stuff in your training. You've just got to find what works for you, because everyone's different if it's to what they like. And as you get further along in a session or even in a race, what worked in hours 1 to 3 might not work from hours 3 to 7. So you might start on like certain combination, but by the end you're like purely on liquids.
Yeah.
And then you want to know like what that looks like to make sure you're still getting enough. So I think like if there was anything that I could get across to listeners, like as far as an amount today, like don't, I was saying about grams per hour for carbs and stuff, like even if they're like, I'm just going to eat more carbs, but when it comes to this, get out your electrolyte carb mixes, get out your gels, look at the back, look at how much carbs is in things and start doing the maths. Keep your wrappers, maybe add up what you're doing at the moment and divide it by how many hours you're out there. And you might be like, oh, I'm getting about 20 or 30 grams of carbs or 10 grams of carbs, see what it is. And then over the weeks ahead, just start to try and add a little bit more So don't try and go straight to 60. Say you're getting 30 grams. Next time you go out, try and get maybe 40 grams per hour and build it up. That's the way I've done it. As much as I want to continue to try and push it, I would never jump straight to 100 grams. The 60, I think, is a minimum if you can, but build to it. And if you're already over it, great. But don't be afraid to push it a little more and see what you can get, because usually the more you can get, the better you feel, the better you keep refueling. And the longer you're out there, you're going to continue to have more fuel to pull from. You will never still hit the calories that you need through that. You'll always still be deficient, but geez, it makes a difference. Like and even in races, you'll see, like, as if you start to have trouble getting stuff in, you can feel it. Like, you can start to feel that energy starting to go, and that's where it can be like, just get it in. You've just got to get past the mental taste thing and the spew thing that you just like, God, you just got to get it down. Aren't I painting a beautiful picture? But I think it's just so important, obviously, because it's just so powerful and important for the race itself. But to come back to recovery, like, if you do this, that I will finish these races now, and don't get me wrong, like, I'll be buggered, and like on long run days, I'll still feel like physically tired. But what I notice is that I recover really well. And also I don't have like any, like, if you get it really right, you don't have any super like high fatigue. You don't get headaches from the lack of electrolytes. Like, it's just amazing. And like, you will see the difference. I've got a friend here who has been amazing in helping me train and learn just on the running side of things, and seeing, even with him, learning about protein intake and like recovery and using nutrition and so forth. Like, someone who would take usually 4 to 5 days to recover is now just like, holy crap, I can't believe how well I'm recovering now, just from the change in the nutrition.
So he's learning the nutrition off you, and you guys are just swapping. I think, like, the other thing is that's worth mentioning, like when you're just saying about the headaches and the recovery and all of that, is that once you get up to this level of exercise and this level of training, like I don't want to say this in a negative way, but it is a huge fucking stress and tax on the physique and the physiology of the body, right? Like, it's not stuffing around. So I think it's really important to, if you're just going to go and run one marathon a year and you're not going to train for it, and that's just your thing that you do, that's fine. And you don't really care about your nutrition, that's fine. Do what you want to do. But if you're someone who's really into this, like you love trail running and you're out trail running with your friends, a couple of times a week, and you're doing these big events a couple of times a year, the toll that can take on the your biochemistry and your physiology, it can be detrimental to your health. Like what Jess was saying before, like you will end up in nutritional deficiencies, you'll get headaches. Like, I even think it's probably applicable to bring this into the cycling world as well. Like, it's so I've got a lot of clients and I've got friends in the cycling arena, and I just, again, similar to the running arena, I just think the nutrition space is really not focused on. Like, I know people, it's nothing for them to go out and ride a couple of 100 Ks a weekend. That's a lot. Like, if you understand cycling, that's a lot. So, even 50 Ks is a lot, especially if you've got a lot of hills and stuff in there. So this whole fueling, recovery, hydration, all of that is so important. I remember one of my friends, when she was getting into cycling, she did it's a Cootha, I think it's called Cootha Burn. I don't know if that's the actual event that she did, but I remember her telling me, and I just thought, how the frig, this is way before, like, this is in my very early days as a practitioner, but I remember her telling me what she did for that event and how she felt after it and during the finishing part of it, and she was actually blacking out for the last, probably couple of K. She just pushed herself to, like, anyone who lives in Brisbane knows Mount Cootha, and some of the hills and stuff in that. But I think it was the Cootha Burn. There's one, I don't know. Anyway, and she finished the race. She did really well. She's a total sportswoman. very athletic, but she vomited after the race. Like, I guess I just imagine spewing's quite normal in the sports arena when you're pushing yourself to that level. But just the way she explained how she felt, but the blacking out, and then just how wrecked she was afterwards. I just remember thinking, how can this be healthy? Yet there's so many people doing it, right? Like, it's just kind of almost normal. No, not normal. Not normal in our world, but normal in the sports arena that, you know, people do just push themselves this hard. Whereas, you know, if you're fueling and understanding your nutrition and stuff, you are going to be able to go and keep doing your endurance races for as long as you want to do them, hopefully, without doing, you know, having any of these, you know, that's the way I look at it as someone who's not doing it. But if you're going to do it, do it and look after your body, right? Don't just push yourself to fatigue extremes and physiological extremes and expect that your body will just bounce back time and time again, because one day I just don't think it will. Like,
it won't. No, you're so right. Like, that's why obviously we're so passionate about this. Like, if you want to do this, like what I am doing is a huge demand on my body. I have to fuel it appropriately. Today we're talking about the race and these big events themselves, but if I don't fuel my body appropriately day to day for all of the training, like, it is just a recipe for disaster. And also, of course, if I don't fuel myself properly through the event, it's also a recipe for disaster in how I will feel during and post, and even how proud I'll be of what I could even do. Like, and there's certainly a very, very high amount of people who are drawn into these endurance events with eating disorder backgrounds. Like, it's kind of blown my mind how many people from this more kind of, you know, pushing that body to the extremes, what can it do, have that type of background. Not everyone, but it's a bloody big percentage. And you can see where that sort of deficit, like as far as like pushing the body and then not eating enough overall to support the body, and how they get into these really, really horrible health spaces where there is this like constant issue with injury and bone injury and what do you call it? Like, not fractures. Yeah, I guess fractures. There's another one that I can't think of. Like, it's basic stress fracture. Yeah, stress fractures in general, broken bones, like just because the bones become so brittle, hormone issues, like you name it, it's rife. And it's because people don't fuel correctly. If they fuel correctly, whole different ball game. Still a lot on your body, for sure. Listen to your body. And that's where, you know, it's a whole nother conversation around how you do the training and having time off and so forth. But if you are not meeting your requirements, you will crash. It's just a matter of when.
And how.
For sure.
So tell us about then, because I think this is another really important one, and I've had this conversation again, not that a huge portion of my clients are in the endurance space, but a good chunk of them over my decade of practice. I've definitely had people in the arena and doing some of the bigger trail runs and stuff like that. How important, I know you and I were actually chatting about this the other day, but the recovery space, like recovery days in general, but tell us about what your post run fuel or even just recovery food looks like, but also how long, especially after a bigger event. Like, I think what was Buffalo Stampede? That was 42,
40 meant to be 42, 44. In the ultra trail space, it is never what they say. They will always have, it's like, 50 Ks. No, it was 52 Ks. They always sneak in. We're looking at the 100 at the moment for COSI later this year, and it's 107. It's not 100, it's 107.
And 7 Ks is a lot.
I know.
Oh my God. It's not like
it's just so difficult.
It'd be different if it was an extra 50 meters, but but yeah, like recovery after an event like this, when it comes to looking after yourself again, like I know even you said, like, I know this is an ever evolving learning space as well, but time off from exercise, just time off from general. Like we were even chatting this week about you like taking, you know, what did we say, like 1 or 2 days off just work afterwards?
At least 2 days, because I did one.
Brain.
Because my brain wasn't back to being where it needed to be. It really wasn't. Sorry anyone else spoke to me on Tuesday. I don't think they noticed. So basically, as soon as you finish, you want to thinking about, I'm in recovery. It's certainly not, again, easy. This is probably still where I definitely am not 100% with this. And some of that honestly has come down to just organization, because often you're away and I just haven't put the priority onto having stuff in the little esky. But basically the main thing is to make sure that you are hydrating and continuing to get in electrolytes and carbohydrates like once you're finishing, just to continue. Like if you fueled really well through the race, you're going to feel so much better, but there will still be a demand. So personally, I'll have an esky there. I'll have like the Bonsai sparkling coconut waters. I'll have like a variety, because it depends on what I can get down. And again, I do not want to eat anything like, it's really hard. Like I'm definitely liquids for at least the first hour and a half. It'll take me like sometimes 2 to 3 hours before I even feel hungry, which is wild, like, to consider. So I'll do those liquids, but I'll also aim, and if I can, and to be transparent, I didn't do this at Buffalo because I didn't have it. I just totally forgot, but I'll aim to have collagen there so I can get protein in as soon as possible too. So I went and bought, which was just delicious. They had iced matcha on almond milk. So I got that. That was just so good. So just getting liquids down with that. But what I should have had is my collagen, because I would have put that in there, or even like the ATP like flavored collagens that you can just shake up on water. Yummy. Getting protein in straight away for repair, like in that first hour, is definitely going to be ideal. So hydrate, protein, carbohydrates, hydrate. And then when you can start to eat, basically you want to have protein. Basically, this is where the macronutrient eating honestly just comes back. So protein, carbohydrates, and fats, like everything's on the table. Usually I'm craving something that is more high fat and high salt, obviously. So sometimes you're away and you go out for dinner. When we're in Buffalo, we went and got grilled fish and chips and salad, like, which went down a treat. I've gone out and had like a big meat patty burger with chips. So it's like, you know, it's high calorie, right? Like really like high calorie stuff. If I'm at home, like it would be something like salmon and wedges and then like a salad, but it's basically like high calorie, definitely protein, fats and carbohydrates, and continuing to hydrate as much as possible. And then honestly, those next few days, as far as not doing anything, like letting your body recover, like if you have the option to go and get a sauna or do anything recovery like that, amazing. Or even if you're up to a massage, like great. But basically having a good couple of days of not doing anything at all, or maybe just some like light yoga stretches or stretching or like a little bit of a walk on the second day, because things can get really tight and stiff. And eating just back straight. Your appetite also may be quite dysregulated for a few days. Like you might be really hungry and then not hungry, like that can happen. But just again, just knowing that you have to eat. So I'm like really conscious of just back into my normal routine of eating, but I'll also maybe still be consuming some additional like coconut waters and so forth through that time frame. But I usually I've been, besides that one event I told you guys about, like I recover really well. Like I'll feel as soon as I stop and sit down, like definitely my legs are like screaming at me, like, what have you just done? Like I'll definitely feel it physically. And then it's always that funny thing of like, and you go to stand up and you're suddenly a 90-year-old woman, like trying to walk. It just blows my mind that you were running half an hour ago. But other than that, like usually you don't really sleep well that night because of all the adrenaline and everything through your system. The next day I will have usually some level of I would say a fatigue, not just being tired, but a fatigue from just everything you've done and not sleeping well. But like my body generally feels pretty bloody good. I might have, like I had really some sore quads for 24 hours from all the downhill, but the recovery of my body like actually blows my mind. And I know it's because of nutrition.
I just have a side segment question when you were what the frig is going on with your feet and from the running? What were you?
Do you really want to know?
No, I don't actually. Okay.
It's like the perils of
running.
yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine. I imagine like ballet dancers' feet. Like when you see, like when you guys were talking about online, I'm like, I can't even get involved in this conversation because I will vomit. Feet talk.
Damien won't look at my feet. He's disgusted in my feet.
Oh, really? But you just like that impact, right? Like just, oh my God.
It's the toenails. That's what it is. Like you build up calluses and you get blisters, but it's the toenails. So I've never had that before. But yeah, I've got a lot, like probably half my toenails at the moment are in the process of falling off or black. I was even just thinking before with coming up to Brisbane next week about usually wearing sandals. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to go wear sandals.
Don't you dare, mate.
I'll paint all my toes with black nail polish
too. Feet from the ankles down. I don't want to see it.
Oh my God. Yeah, God.
Such a thing. Sorry, just something you said there when you were talking about like all of that. I was like, oh, that's right. The feet, they don't recover.
Yeah, they don't recover. The toenails don't like it. It's a flaw in our genetics is how our toes they do not handle like ongoing impact.
I've had I was chatting with Lex about this one time because I've got such a thing about weird looking feet. Like it's like, so I don't know what has happened to me, but feet just freak me out. But she was saying Drew, because he does his bike riding.
Oh, yeah.
She's like the amount of accidents he's had where he same thing had to put his feet out and stop. And she's like, he has just broken so many toes that his toes just like I couldn't go. Mixed feet, like I don't like mixed feet. He's got this one bent toe, and I'm like, that is not right.
Yeah, it's for so manky.
But I can just imagine just that constant impact, especially running downhill. Hey, when you're sliding and stuff, like no matter how tight your shoes are, like your toenails and your toes.
Yeah, but you don't feel it. Like, well, I don't. I never know that it's happening until I take my shoes off, and then I'm like, oh.
Oh my goodness. I was thinking again. My brain's just going ping pong. I was just thinking too when you were talking about recovery. You said sauna. What about like a magnesium or some sort of salt bath? Like obviously
the bath.
There's obviously cold plunging saunas, like so many people use that. But I was even just thinking a nice like warm or lukewarm, not straight after the race, obviously, but in the day or two following, magnesium soak or something like what City Cave offers if you're close to the city. I know that's probably not an option for you, but like that would have to be so good for your muscles, right?
Yeah, no, actually I forgot about that. I usually, if I can, will have a bath once I get home.
Yeah.
Like it's usually like Buffalo, we got back to accommodation. It was like probably 3 hours later and I ran the bath and I just sat in the bath and it was just delicious. Except for when you get in, you usually have chafe, like bad chafe. And that really stings.
Chafe or boob chafe?
Oh man, I've got at the moment, like I don't mind the chafe I've just dealt with, but the chafe I'm hating at the moment, I've got it like in between my boobs. And I'm like, I do not want that to scar because it's like, if you wear anything low cut. So I'm like covering it with like all these creams at the moment. I don't know. Yeah.
I was going to say, like, what do you do when you run? Do you chuck something over it, like a tallow or something like that?
I actually use Vaseline. Like we've tried so many things, but basically I put on layers of Vaseline. The sports bras are the killers, like all under that. And then the pack rubs. So I just Vass up. And then if I'm, sounds so wrong. And then during the event.
People need to know.
Usually Damien halfway, if he asked me in Buffalo and I just was like, nah, I'm fine. But I know with Cozzy, he reapplied for me at an aid station, which I'm so thankful. He just and he just looks so gross. Yeah, just whacks it all in there. Because like the chafe can be like, it can, Oh, that is painful. And chafe in between, like I would never wear like shorts that didn't come down to a certain length now. Like I've ran a race once and got chafe in between the legs and it just sting.
Oh,
So
chafe's
bad.
like, I'm not even a runner, and but just because I've got like little chunky thighs, I am not averse to getting chafe. It is, I
It's
get it
so
a lot.
wrong.
It's gross. I get it actually a lot when we're fishing because I'll fish in shorts. Like I've learned now just to wear a bikini bottom. But when you're out fishing in the waves and you kind of, because I have to work out further to cast than the boys, so you kind of just stand there. But when I've done it in shorts before, just the walking backwards and forwards and running up the beach, when you land a massive fish, but just the backwards and forwards with sandy shorts on. Oh my gosh, I have just ended up with little chafe sores. Oh my God, my thighs so I can
It's
only imagine what it's
horrible.
like when you're running. Oh my God, it's
Yep.
just
Yep.
chafe is just
It's
the
horrible.
worst.
Yep. I just want to really quickly, before these last questions, speak to the gut. I know I've mentioned it. A few little things that I do, I guess just again having that knowledge is I like to always have, if I go away or at home, but most of the time it's away, I'll take enzymes with me because I know that my appetite's going to not be great. So I love having the enzymes to use, like particularly more pre and post. In particular, slippery elm, one of my favorites. Like if I do feel like my intestinal tract feels a little aggravated in any way, pre or post, like I'll just use some of that with all like the nerves and everything too. The gut's a hard one in that, like you can just get an upset gut and have loose bowels just from the stress alone. So sometimes it's really hard to tell. Like I will feel stress in my gut and sometimes I'm fine and sometimes I'm not. This recent race, I was really stressed about my gut leading into it. I know I spoke to you, Rissy. We just had I still question whether it was like an actual gastrovirus or we had a dodgy chicken episode. But Damien wasn't well and then I wasn't well. And like 3-4 days out from the race, I was still feeling sick every day. I like had really loose bowels and I'm like, if I can just go in the morning and it's done, that's fine. But I was terrified of like being out there and like having to go and just like having to run off into the bushes and also then just losing that time and feeling sick and all that sort of stuff. But I just took all of the things leading up to the race to help my gut, which really helped. But honestly, some of the big things that I always rely on will be slippery elm, enzymes, sometimes some probiotics, and even sometimes with glutamine, I'll use glutamine leading up. Like if I've got, I'm not going to name products, but some of our favorites, if I've got that in the house, like as a general gut anti-inflammatory powder, because I know that if my gut is feeling a little angry or I feel anxious, if there's anything I can do just to calm it down, really, really love that. So I actually feel like there's a really big space for like gut health in this arena and what you can do to support the gut. And then I think there's a lot of people who go into it having problems who obviously we've talked about before have underlying gut issues. So they start trying to have like these higher carb fuel sources and they can't handle it because of like whether it's dysbiosis or SIBO or like something that's going on. So yeah, the gut can be testy because of lots of factors. But usually if you've got a healthy gut leading into it, you've fueled correctly, and also you're fueling correctly out there, like it will also usually take care of you. Often if you're under fueling, like that also can be a reason why your gut can turn on you, which people don't realize, which is kind of ironic. Like they're not getting hardly anything in and then like their gut turns. Yeah. Shall we finish with some of these like last 2 questions? I'll be quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Someone asked what I eat afterwards. What, Jessica? That doesn't make sense. What can I eat afterwards to restore the gut after all the gels, etc.? So, yeah, like honestly, everything that I've said and spoken to, like I would just stand by all of that. You don't really need to restore the gut. Like the gels, you're taking these carbs and gels, they're being used as fuel very, very quickly, like absorbed and utilized. If they're really ripping your gut apart, then you need to look at your gut health a little deeper. So that's probably what I would say there. However, eat well afterwards, hydrate well afterwards. If it feels angry or upset, like don't underestimate a little bit of slippery elm for a couple of days. I'm happy to just kind of lay that one on the table. But yeah, I don't think it's something as like you've treated it bad with all these gels and then you've got to like recover it. If it's a problem generally from the gels, look at your gut health further.
Can I just ask a question about gels? I imagine there's the good, the bad, and the ugly in the gel world.
Yes and no. Hey,
Okay.
I think it comes down to, again, like what you can handle, but most of them still like it's sugar.
Oh, it's
like
just sugar, so there's not a heap of other crap added.
Well, no, that's not true. Like some of them will have like maybe some additives and some binders and those kind of components to like give a certain texture. And if you are not good with those kind of like, I guess, depending on how you are with say maltodextrin and the type of maltodextrin, but then maltodextrin's a base of a lot of these products. So there are some gels for sure that are more natural, like the ones I use, Pure Sports Nutrition. They definitely, I should have had one here to read out the ingredients, but their sweeteners are definitely still just pure glucose that's added into them. But then they also have, say, like pineapple juice, or they'll have like whatever the flavor is, actually have the fruit juice in that. And then everything else is pretty, like in quotation marks, natural that they'll put into it. But honestly, I think like the second question was, do I favor fructose or glucose gels? The gels will also either be just glucose based or they can have a combination of the two. And then I think that's also where, depending on how people go with fructose and what their gut's like, that's where that can be a problem. But usually glucose gels are fine if you're taking up to about 60 grams of carbs an hour. But once you're trying to get over, without getting too sciencey about it, you need to start adding in fructose because you can only absorb so much glucose per hour. So then like you need to start using other transporters in the gut to get your carbohydrate sources. So that's where you'll see fructose coming in, and particularly with the higher carb mixes. I've personally tried like a 90-gram carb fructose glucose mix drink. And when I tried that, it didn't work well for me. Like that was that was one of those runs where I was like running off the side. But again, I went too hard, too fast, I think, with that one. I did make it home. I just was like for a minute like, I don't think I'm going to make it home. But yeah, they do definitely vary as far as like those flavorings and additives and so forth. But, you know, I love the Pure Sports stuff. I think it goes down well. It's easy. I feel like my gut loves them. But I haven't had a particular gel with other brands that I've had that I felt like have been super problematic. It's just been more about consistency. Yeah.
Cool.
So I think that's it. Holy shamoli.
Lots of talking.
Lots of talking.
I just sat back and enjoyed the episode.
I hope that's helpful. I feel like that I could go into rabbit holes of lots of areas there. I know I didn't really speak much about fluids per hour, or like we've mentioned electrolytes and sodium intake and so forth. If anyone has any further questions, you can always DM me. And I think I'm going to put together a post on the website to just kind of put some of these numbers together as a bit of a reference. So we'll speak a little bit to maybe the fluids and sodiums there. But I hope the main takeaway people get is just like, bloody make sure you feel what you're doing. Don't go in and do these big events, whether it's a run or a bike, like long, bike rides or triathlons, whatever it is. Make sure you fuel yourself appropriately.
Yeah.
Pre, during, and post, and you'll get the most out of that. If you don't do it, you're not going to get the most out of it. You're going to feel like crap. And the worst case scenario is that you will at some point end up doing damage to yourself. And we don't want that. Cool. All righty. Shall we wrap her up?
Let's wrap her up.
wrap her up. I don't have any recommendations. I
Neither,
didn't even
because I
think
feel like we
about
just
it.
did a podcast, so I don't
Yeah,
have anything
okay.
either. Cool.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening. And as always, if you can share the episode on socials, that it would be amazing. It means the world to us. If you have any suggestions for any guests you'd like us to have or any future topics, make sure you hit us up. But otherwise, we'll catch you next time.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.